Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Junk Raider podcast, where today we're going to be talking about how to run an efficient junk removal business. How do you run your operation? And to kind of kick things off, we've had an incident over the last few days where we had a job that was booked where it was way off in terms of the time suck and even the size of the job. And that's what really kicked off this topic where we landed on and said this would be a good one to talk about today. So I think for you, Davis, it's about how do we run an efficient operation, and from your perspective, what is the best way to do that?
I would, I go back to like the early days of when we first started. I think I told somebody this the other day. I was like, you go into something, really anything in life, in business, personal, whatever, and you've heard a lot of, call them influencers, or maybe it's a parent or a mentor or whatever has told you something, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I'll make sure I do that. But you don't really know what it's like until you go through it. And then, so I sit here today and I'm like, we have a different perspective on making sure that we run a really efficient operation, specifically with the jobs that we put on the books and our teams go out in the field and take care of. I guess what I'm saying is, like, back in the early days, 6 years ago, like, we knew we needed to, we could book maybe 4, 5, 6 jobs a day and knock them out. And it was really bad if we had to push any job. But today, I think my awareness is more so centered around like numbers and financials. Not that it wasn't back then, because we were still like, how do we price jobs? How do we make sure we're profitable on them? How do we increase our revenue day by day, week by week, month over month? But today we have just a way better outlook on what is our like company's break even number per day. And what do we need to see on each truck per day? Because we can tell pretty quickly if we're winning or losing day by day. So I think the enlightening moments, especially this week, was, we had a job for the crowd. We had a job scheduled for Tuesday, an office clean out in Uptown. And we had estimated it. We had estimated it like a month ago. One of our guys went out there, out on site, told us, hey, this looks like it's 2 of our truckloads. Shouldn't take longer than a day. We just need one team out here to knock it out. We'll take 2 truckloads gone, and that's how we priced it. Well, fast forward to Tuesday of this week, we started the job, and it turned out to be 3x that in terms of time, not necessarily volume, but time. Potentially a little bit more volume. I think one more truckload than we had estimated, but the time was not accounted for. Time being, there's an elevator like somewhere on the property that's far away to access. And then if you did access it, it would take even longer to get back to the truck where you had to park. It's in the middle of a city. Or you could go downstairs, which is somewhat more convenient, but it's going downstairs with very heavy pieces of furniture. And oh, by the way, we didn't take into account these cubicles were like, I forget what our guy said, but they were like almost not like bolted in the wall, but we had to get maintenance, I think, to like cut off some sort of circuit or something so that we didn't electrocute ourselves. I could be making it up, something along the lines
No,
of,
that's true.
this isn't a cubicle that you just take off and move it. Additional time suck. That this job spilled into from, it was supposed to be done on Tuesday by one truck and have really good revenue on it. And then that truck could be hitting the road, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and collect even more revenue on the month or on the week. And we just, because that job took now 3 full days instead of the one estimated day, sent our whole business into a turmoil really for this week, because we're already a little short staffed this week because we're, in the summer months and people are taking vacation. And so in the junk business, the net here is, in the junk business, you can't have mishaps like that, because it impacts the rest of the schedule. And it does in any industry, but like, for our business, where our average job size is so small relative to other home service type things you could be doing, whether that's roofing or painting or whatever, you can't mess with a single day and what's on that schedule and start pushing jobs to the next day. And then those jobs on that day get pushed to the next day, and so on and so forth. It's a domino effect. All the while, your call center's taking calls from people that want same day service, and you can't do it because you misquoted this one job. That's now taking more time and labor, and other trucks are having to come in and help. So that's where, our business is at this week, is just, we're in a little bit of turmoil. We're getting the job done. Thankfully, our client's been great, but we've missed out on a good amount of revenue, not only from this job that we misquoted. We probably should have quoted not only the volume, but also the labor involved. But we also missed on potential revenue we could have gotten. There's probably 5 to 10 jobs that we missed being able to get this week because people needed same or even next day service and we couldn't get it. And there's some on for next week that we, or we put on for tomorrow, Saturday, or even into next week, that we hope, fingers crossed, don't end up canceling on us when we start to head out their way, because they booked with us on Wednesday of this week. And we were like, we don't have any availability Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. We got to put you on for Tuesday because Monday's a holiday. So that's where our business is at. And where, from, I guess to sum it up, Ted, from my angle, it's important that you have guys in the field that, and this is a common thing, a theme I think we've talked about a lot, is the physical aspect of the job is what it is. You got to be able to lift. You got to be able to have endurance and go through an 8, 9, 10-hour day doing physical labor. But there's a strategy piece of this that is really the kicker. The sales piece of it kind of goes hand in hand, in my opinion. But being able to accurately quote something, not just from how do we price this to the customer so that we, can put ourselves in the best position to win it, but how do you set your company up for success so that when we're planning the rest of the schedule for the week and what we do or don't have capacity for, how many trucks we do or don't have, had we known on Tuesday that job was going to take 3 full days and potentially 3 or 4 of our trucks, we would have probably just not booked anything for all day Tuesday. We would have had all of our trucks on that job, knock it out in one day, leaving, Wednesday as a potential day to maybe go and finish up. And then we could have continued on the rest of the week, taken on same day calls and whatnot, and kept up with our potential revenue that we want to grab. So it's important, from that angle, that your employees, not just in the call center, not just from us up here as the owners and in the call center and your field manager, but everybody who's involved understands the importance of stacking good days on top of each other. Good days being, you rarely ever have to cancel a job, push a job because of your own lack of planning. That's the net. So, for me, that's kind of where I'm at today, 6 years later. In this, obviously, context is everything, right? We're 6 years later where we're doing 10, 15 jobs a day. And in the early days, we were lucky to have 1 or 2 if we got somebody on Craigslist who was willing to give us a job. So you don't have that sort of sense of urgency. But now we've got a lot of balls in the air. We've got a call center. We've got, an increased ad spend. So the volume is there. Got a lot more jobs in the books. We got a lot more trucks on the road. So there's just more happening. They all have to work in sync to be able to run an efficient operation and not miss revenue. The last thing I'll say is I mentioned this to you earlier today, like the business is such that we don't have the luxury of missing a day like you maybe do in something like painting or roofing, right? If you tell a customer, hey, we're going to charge you $30,000 to put a new roof on. It's going to take, we'll be out there Monday and we'll be done by Wednesday. Wednesday comes and they're like, hey, Mr. Fisher, we got to come back out Thursday just to do some touch-up work. There's some shingles, that we don't like. We're going to come back out Thursday. That's something that they didn't plan for, right? They thought it was a 3-day job. It's going to spill into a fourth day, but it's a $30,000 job. They're not missing, 10 to 15 other jobs that they could have gotten because they missed on a couple of hours of additional work that they needed to. For us, as soon as we find a job, get ourselves to a job where it's taken us even just an hour longer than expected, we're kind of screwed because we're a high volume, high turnover business. And that's where the efficiency conversation comes into play. You have to have guys coordinating in the field with your call center, effectively to be able to run this type of operation. So maybe some things there that a lot of people don't know about the junk industry, but it's very like, be on your P's and Q's. Don't make mistakes when it comes to scheduling and quoting and estimating time and volume and all that type of stuff. So what do you think?
Well, I want to first go back and kind of set the tone for where this came from, why this topic made so much sense, because we got on here and it was like, hey, what do you want to address? What do you want to talk about? We both agreed what's been going on this week and even today would be a great topic. So because of everything you said, I would say we have been upset with the guys and have made it clear how things got so screwed up and how to avoid it from happening again. And so what really precipitated this today is you'd put out a note to the guys this afternoon reminding them of the mistakes that have been made and the lost revenue as a consequence. And just for more context, backing up, remember, James messed up his arm recently, so we had to pull him out of the field with junk removal and put him into a different division, which Eric is also working on. So there's James and Eric out. They couldn't step in and help this week. Raekwon was on vacation for 8 days, so he was out all week. And today happens to be Jack's day off. So we have James, Jack, Eric, and Quan all out of commission. So we were so short staffed, which is very unusual, but we were so short staffed this week. You and I had to work a couple days. I worked again yesterday, which we have not been in the field. I haven't been in the field like that, and it's been years. So when I saw your note come out, and this is really my big question here, I saw your note come out to the team, and I'm thinking about the day that I had yesterday working with TJ and with Jack and with Dallas, and morale was already really low. They feel very much under the gun, very pressured. TJ was really beating himself up, rightfully so, but he was beating himself up. And for me, it's good to do that. There's times where you need to beat yourself up, but you don't want to stay there. And I have that balance because TJ is not only one of our employees, he's my son. So I have to see him later and we have to talk about these things. And I know his personality, and I know that he's been frustrated lately at some of these mistakes he's made, frustrated at himself. So anyway, the question, I guess, is that I would like to pose for anyone that watches this, and this isn't exclusive to junk removal. This is anyone that either owns a business, manages people. This really comes down to management style. But what is the balance between being honest with your team with poor performance? Because being honest with your team with great performance is easy. Hey, guys, y'all did great. That's easy. But what is the balance with your team with poor performance versus staying positive and keeping morale high? Right? That's what I'm always so cognizant of. I'm trying to be very conscious of with our guys is, listen, they do need feedback. I don't want to just these are grown men. TJ's 23. Matt is 34, 35. Eric, I think, is 33, 34. We're not talking about kids right out of high school. We've got a bunch of men here. So I don't want to coddle and baby. And yet there is a balance, right? And sometimes it's like, even if they did mess up, and we do need to manage to that, and people do need to know they messed up, it needs to be in writing, all those things. I always wrestle, though, with the balance of the old sandwich technique of start positive, give them the truth that may sting, but end it in positive. I try to really live by that, and I don't always get it right. But that's where you and I sometimes just disagree, right? Because I tend to be, as you know, more emotional, but also I do tend to be more not so cut and dry, not so numbers oriented, more just like, hey, listen, there's context. They're having a tough day. It's 110 degrees outside with a heat index. We have no AC in that truck. Let's cut them a little bit of slack. And you tend to be a little more hard nosed at times of just like, and not that you're not sympathetic, but you tend to be just more like, I get it, but we've got a business to run. The numbers are down. They need to do this. They've made these mistakes. And I tend to push back and go, I get it, but we've also made that abundantly clear over the course of 3 days now. Let's not keep rubbing salt in the wound. But what is the balance of being honest with poor performance, but not crapping your guys out? Because regardless, we do have guys in the field, and it's like, I don't want to, even if you're right, I don't want to crap them out in the middle of the day when they're in the job, when they're sitting there trying to get the job done. You don't want your guys to be so demoralized, beating themselves up, that they're not as productive as they can be. Positivity is contagious, but so is negativity. And I would argue negativity is much more contagious. It is cancerous. Someone that's happy and in a good mood may not spread that as quickly as the person in the bad mood. That person that comes in is demoralized and is like, man, I'm just getting reamed out today nonstop. I've made mistake after mistake. I get it. I'm just tired of hearing about it. That's the balance I always try to remember is we don't want to go too hard on them in the middle of the day while they're on that job and then have them get so demoralized. Is there ever a chance to go, you know what? Up yours, Davis, I'm out of here. So maybe I'm too far. Maybe I'm too much of a dad and a granddad now that I've gotten too soft. As Matt would say, I'm as soft as ice cream. I do think it is the balance, but I just wanted to get your perspective on that one question. What is that balance? How do you address the poor performance? Should it be done in the middle of the day like that, with trying to keep morale high?
I think both of us have tried over the years to, I guess, emulate the other in a sense so that both of us individually are more balanced. I agree with everything you said. I'm very pointed and like, this isn't right. Let's fix it. And I haven't in years past done a great job of understanding personnel. I come from a basketball world. We had a KYP that always went on the whiteboard at the beginning of games, and that was know your personnel. And it was, you could see in some guys' eyes, like who really paid attention to that. Like you would put the starting lineup, their last name and their number, and you would put on our team who's going to start out guarding them. And each of those guys would have like 3 bullets underneath, like whatever, heavy right side driver, rebounds the crap out of it. And then, whatever the third bullet is. So you'd have this whiteboard and you'd have a locker room full of guys looking at the coach in this whiteboard. and you would have KYP up there, which everybody knew was know your personnel. And there were some guys on the team that knew their personnel and some guys didn't. It was very apparent once you got to the game. Like, you just gave up a right side drive. You know this guy loves to go right. Why did know your personnel? So I say that to say in my years past, I don't really, sounds bad to say, but I guess I didn't take into consideration like the different personalities that we have in our organization and how each one needs a different level of nurture and care. Not to say that some folks need to be babied and others can take it, can take more harsh truth, but like, you do have to cater to different personalities differently. And that's something that in the last probably years or so I feel like I've done a good job of. What I will say is one of my faults, maybe is a fault, maybe other people will be like, it's really not a fault, is like, and this is even true in my personal life, like if there's something that comes up that we've talked about and we're experiencing it live in a moment, I'm the guy that wants to point it out so that it's fresh in your mind and I don't have to remember it a day from now, a week from now, a month from now, and be like, do you remember that job that we misquoted on Tuesday, the 24th, that carried into Friday, the 20th? You know what I mean? Like, I prefer to call it out right then, make sure that it's sinking, right? Because to me, there's no better coach than you being in a moment and feeling what you've done, good or bad. Right. We've just as much, and I'll say this about myself, not to toot my own horn, but I've given so much praise where guys have done a phenomenal job. You priced this job incredibly well, right? Like, you didn't miss a beat here. You actually made, a few more dollars on this job based on how you priced it and the time and everything. That's what I would say. And I think the other thing too, that's really difficult. So I guess what I would say to end that sentiment was, what's tough for me is like, if we have talked about it for 3 days and the mishap we have made as a group, I need people to acknowledge it. And then I will be less likely to continue to bring it up. Like for us, we've had same day calls come in today and we weren't able to service them because we've got this job from Tuesday still going on. But like, there's certain individuals that have yet to raise their hand and be like, yeah, hear you loud and clear. Thanks for sending that video 2 days ago. That makes total sense. We goofed, we're going to do better to really try to, whatever it is, the acknowledgement just hasn't been there. And that's my main problem, is that hasn't been for some of our guys the case. They just haven't acknowledged it. So it makes me think that you're not hearing me. The last thing I'll say about it is we have a remote workforce, which just makes it more difficult. So guys will work 5 days in the truck and then they get 2 days off, as everybody does in a normal week. I don't want to make them come into an office and meet with me face to face or do a FaceTime or anything. The only time I have available to communicate with our team, and so do you and everybody else, is remotely over a WhatsApp thread. And as we all know, with electronic communication, things can get taken out of context very quickly. And so I think that just makes the nature of our business difficult, is because we don't have the ability to, okay, I'm going to walk in the office on Monday and see Ted at 9 a.m. and we'll hash out whatever problem was from the previous week. We're just always trucks out on the road. Ted works from his house. Davis works from his house. If we need to coach our guys, it has to be done remotely, has to be done with videos and text messages. And it just makes things really, really difficult. So that's what I would say.
So, one of my favorite expressions is John Maxwell. He says, people perform better under the spirit of praise than criticism. And I read that book like as a newlywed 25 years ago, and it just really stuck out because I thought of these bad bosses I'd had prior to that, to reading that, who was the exact opposite. They thrived under just criticizing. And my dad was a lot that way. So I really just thought that's the way managers, bosses, authority figures were, is just very much criticize. When you do something wrong, just criticize. And it's taken me years to really understand that is, nobody wants to be criticized. And that's the rub. That's the balance but you do have to critique, right? So we can call it, instead of saying, I'm going to give you some criticism, I could say, I'm going to give you some constructive feedback. But really, it means essentially the same thing. It's just the tone, the tenor is different. And so that's where I think you and I oftentimes aren't on the same page. It's like, man, I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. Though it's maybe the timing of that message, it's maybe the repetition of that message, and it's also the recipient of that message, right? You could say something to Matt, and Matt is like, got it, understood, 10-4. And he's good. In fact, he doesn't want you to give him too much of the praise. It's like, man, Davis, I screwed that up. I don't need any kind of encouragement here. I'm good. I know it. right? I messed up. I'll fix it. Whereas when you're talking to someone like TJ, who is more emotional, who is more, well, just emotional, if you say that to TJ one too many times, he may not react the way we want him to react. In fact, when I was leaving the job site yesterday, funny story, then I'll wrap it up, I promise. I stayed behind. Jack and I were there, and we were just busting butt. I mean, we had made a ton of progress from the time that TJ and Dallas left to empty the truck to the time they came back. I would say, I mean, you saw the video, 75 to 80% of that stuff that was in the middle, we had already gotten. It was either completely gone in the truck or we had it organized off to the side where it was mostly done. That gigantic pile we had cleaned up 75, 80%. So I told TJ before he left, I thought I made it clear, hey, I haven't eaten all day, and I'd love for you to grab something to eat on your way back. I haven't eaten. I know everyone's going to be hungry. And for whatever reason, TJ didn't get that message. So I am thinking he's going to walk in with a bag of Chick-fil-A. We're going to high five over our chicken nuggies, scarf him down. I'm going to be reinvigorated because I am starving, haven't eaten anything today. And anyway, so he walks in and he's got no food. And so I'm like, Tej, where's my food? I'm starving. And he was like, oh, I stopped and got Dallas something. I was like, wait, you stopped and got Dallas something to eat, but not me, not Jack? You didn't even get you anything? He's like, well, I'd already eaten earlier. I'm like, okay, all right, Tej. So he knows now I'm upset with him. So when I go to leave, he was downstairs loading the truck. I'm just getting ready to leave because I've got to get back. So I go to leave and I see him out there and someone had just pulled up and handed him a bag of food. He felt so bad. He ordered like Uber Eats and had some food for me when I was leaving. So now I feel even worse. I feel like such a jerk. So I go over to him and I was like, Tej, I'm not mad at you, son. You didn't have to order me food. I was just being grumpy because I haven't eaten all day. I'm thinking you're bringing me Chick-fil-A. And anyway, I go over to him and I hugged him and I said, buddy, it's okay. Seriously, look at me. I'm not mad. I know you've been dumped on the last couple days. You messed it up. I get it, but it's okay. It's okay. Life goes on. We've all made these mistakes. I gave him a hug and I could see he was a little bit emotional. I could see he was right there on the edge because it's dad. It's not just his boss potentially mad at him. It's dad, So I get in the car and I leave. And so I'm thinking about this the whole way home. I'm thinking about this all then. And of course, then earlier today, when you put that message out, that's what really hit me is, so just as a wrap up, I have tried over the last 25 years to get better about being, number one, a servant leader, and which, by the way, you exemplify. You absolutely are a servant leader. You never ask the guys to do anything that you're not willing to do. But the other thing I've tried to really be conscious of is just giving grace. Doesn't mean coddle, Davis. I just feel like there's a time and a place. If I'm in the middle of doing a job and it's 110 degrees, no AC in the truck, and this is now the third time that I'm getting an earful, that's like, dude, you're asking me to snap. Like, I got it. I don't need you to tell me one more time. I'm crystal clear. I've tried to get better about just understanding my audience, that I can talk differently to Matt than I can, or James, than I can to TJ or to Eric. When I'm dealing with emotional guys versus very cut and dry guys like you just want to be told, hey, here's the deal. You messed that up. Here's what needs to happen. Go. And you're like, got it, done. But everyone's not like that. And so I try to keep that balance. So that's really my vantage point, is know your audience and try to manage based on the individual, like Phil Jackson, right? It's how do you deal with these big personalities, Phil? Well, it's easy because I understand that they're individuals. I treat them as individuals. I don't treat Kobe the same way I treat Shaq. So I've tried to adopt that same philosophy. But anyway, everyone has to figure this out for themselves. But I would encourage other business owners, other managers to treat others the way you want to be treated. Nobody wants to be screamed at. Nobody wants to be made to feel that they're idiots. And so neither do your guys. Your people don't want to feel that way. So if you're that person, do some soul searching and ask yourself, is that how you want to be talked to? The answer is always no. So just try to bring that balance to the equation every time.
And what I would add to that in ending is, if you're on the receiving end and you've made a goof, the worst thing to do is silence yourself. To your point, I would never ping Ted 3 times in 110-degree weather, continuing to dump on him for the mistake he made 3 days ago. Because on day one, you would have likely put out a video message acknowledging the mistake. And that's all that anybody is asking for. We're not asking you to be a Roman god and turn this thing around something miraculously. Just acknowledge it. because that's what we're trying to do, is just get better. So if you don't acknowledge it, it makes us feel like you're not hearing us, you're not seeing it, it doesn't make sense or something. And if that's the case, that's the worst path, because we don't want to repeat the action. So that's what I would leave it with, is if you are the person making the mistake, which I've made plenty of mistakes, acknowledging it and talking to, making sure that whoever is giving you the feedback, you're giving it back to them, saying, I hear you, that makes sense, or it doesn't, let's talk through it. Whatever the case may be, they just need to have that open dialogue.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Well, I think this was a very good conversation. I hope someone out there gets something from it. And it really is applicable for anyone, whether you're a business owner, manager, could be just a parent. Having that mindset, though, of the timing and know your audience is such a critical one. But you're right. If you're the receiver, make sure you're taking responsibility and ownership, and that you're making your team aware. I hear you, and I'm working on that. And here's my benchmarks. Sometimes we like to say I'm working on it, but we're really not. And so that's where it's important to go, I'm not just working on it. Here's the proof. Like I want to have, over the next couple of weeks, I want to start doing these things. So here's metrics. Here's the KPIs involved, versus just saying, yeah, I'm with you, I'm working on that. Let's make sure that there's proof behind that. Anyway, great episode. Bye.